Today, Board of County Commissioners meeting, our regular agenda will start March 16, 2021. If we could rise for the invocation, the Reverend isn't here, so I'll pinch hit for him. Bow your heads, please.
Mr. Chairman, if we may we remember in prayer this morning EMT Royland Vidal. EMT Vidal was 21 years old. He worked with us here in the county and was greatly respected by his coworkers. He passed away over the weekend unexpectedly.
Absolutely. Dear Lord, as we rise to meet each new day, please let us fill with your Spirit. Wherever we go, let us spread love, joy, and peace, goodness, and faithfulness. Let us desire to become more like you and worship in all you do. Help us desire these things so much and avoid sin at all costs. Thank you for all you're doing in your name. I'd like to pray for the first responders, our military that gives us our freedom, for all the people that are trying to help cure this disease, COVID-19, in our name and in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Turn the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There are no ceremonial presentations as they've been deferred. Recap. Pretty long recap, as I recall. Items to be deferred part of the month, obviously, as I just indicated. Revisions and corrections. Item C17, approved GS10, preserve land management, requested by county administration. We have a walk-on. Thank you. Approved family non-congratulatory sheltering and rapid housing program. Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. And Commissioner items, Commissioner Mann. Discuss RIP-RAP request for islands along Caloosahatchee near Caloosahatchee Regional Park, and then obviously the 52nd one-year anniversary of COVID-19. So that's our recap that we have. Consent agenda items we'll move on to. Any items that the board would like to pull?
I have none. I have none, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any either.
I would move the consent agenda.
I'll second it. A motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Move on to the administrative agenda.
You want to have them start with C17 since that's the one they moved to the administrative agenda?
That'd be great.
Mr. Chair? Yes. Jess, you please present C17.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're asking the board to approve the land management plan for GS10. This land management plan was done by AIM Engineering, who's contracted by Lehigh Acres Municipal Services Improvement District, per the Memorandum of Understanding from 2018. If you recall, LAMCID is conducting a water storage, water quality project on the preserve, and then it will be turned over to Parks and Rec for recreational amenities at a later date.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Great. So how long will construction last on the land management plan and the LAMCID project that they're building?
The terms of the agreement that we have with LAMCID allows for 12 years, so this would be the second year of that agreement, so they have another 10 years to complete the project.
Okay. And what opportunities for public access are there currently out there?
There aren't any currently. It's hard to, and I've explained this to Commissioner Mann before, they're going to dig out a significant chunk of this preserve and store more water and then restructure it with marshes and things like that to help filter the water. So for Parks and Rec to put amenity out there that's just going to get torn up in the future is somewhat of a waste of money.
So this allows for 12 years for LAMSID to do the,
to complete the project.
okay. And do they have funding for that, or do we?
They do not currently have funding for it, but as soon as they do, the project would commence. The county has submitted a request to the state for a community block grant in the amount of $1.9 million, and we've yet to hear anything back.
Jesse, just to follow up, I know you'd send a state, the application for funding, is this a federal block grant? Is it a state or a federal?
Federal.
Okay. Just wanted clarity for the record. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up
Absolutely.
kind of where you were headed. Mr. Lavender and I have had several conversations on the GS10 project out there, not just on what the LAMSID group intends by way of water storage, and they have great need for additional storage beyond even what the GS10 project will allow. But we have a dream, right? You and I are sharing about how this project could lend itself to be a recreational facility as well, not unlike what we have at Lakes Park. Can you just touch on what is conjuring up in your head, and as best you read my mind too, for these 135,000 people that are out there? It has great potential.
Correct. So envision a Lakes Park out east. Probably not at the playground and the train, take that aspect away, but envision bridges, kayaking, fishing, hiking, people looking at birding opportunities out there just as they do at Lakes Park. This is going to be a water storage area that everybody's going to be able to walk around and see every pond, every curve, every filter marsh with bridges and things like that. So, there's potential for, like Lakes Park, electric motors, fishing, putting little structured smaller skiffs in with electric motors and things like that. So it's really going to be a gem in the eastern part of the county.
Could you make it easy for us to find it, or does everybody have this packet that came with it? It's like a 30-page packet. Could you point out that one picture that you had showed me that told the story? Because I just want you guys to be as excited as I am, lucky enough to be the district commissioner out there. I can't find it now, Jesse, the one you showed me the other day that had the little pathways.
Yes, sir, I'm looking for it. I'm sorry.
At any rate, it showed little pathways in the water, in the lakes themselves, for hiking trails and access for kayaks, and for Grandpa, I keep referring to take his granddaughter out there fishing, a little catch and release program. There it is.
Maybe the tech folks could put that on the screen there, the paper that Jesse slid under the projector. There we go. Oh, there you go.
I kind of describe what we're looking at there. This really gets me excited about the potential there. When you think in terms of Lakes Park, and you see.
So, commissioners, these are all bridges that would connect the trail system that goes through the filter marsh. We've got an island here that people can enjoy. So it's very similar to Lakes Park, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the public to recreate.
I just want everybody excited and take a chance to ring this bell as loud as I can. There's no real dollars committed here yet, but it's a concept that I think the commission has been comfortable with, and I just want to keep the heat under it as best we can as we look for grants and we look for partial funding when we can. We're talking about doing a lot of this right up at the top northeast corner, which I think we can, with care, be able to accomplish well before Lambshead does all of what they're trying to do first. So I don't want this to be a 10 or 12 year thing for a while the 135,000 good citizens of Lehigh cool their heels. So this is just a pep talk.
That's that was my thought, Commissioner, as well. It is a great project that I'm eager to see come to fruition, especially for the folks of Lehigh Acres. And so what were your thoughts on the 12-year timeline? Is that too long of a timeline, or is that realistically what it would take to do something like this?
Well, the 12 years, I think, is pretty much for the benefit of Lambshead and what they're trying, because they've got to scoop out millions of cubic yards of fill there and move it around in order to accommodate the water storage component. But it shouldn't take anything near that long, in my judgment, to have the first parts of a park available around the edge of it where they're not doing all of their stuff, or at least we can coordinate with them. And I just want us to be looking for every opportunity to move this forward beyond a 12-year so far out that you can't even.
Mr. Commissioner, I think this falls right in line with the things that we've talked about numerous times before, is that as we go about these projects, making it accessible, to the citizens, which is great for the individuals, great for the community. Is this plan still a work in progress, or is this pretty much set for right now? I realize we have some time, but.
So this is a concept map.
Okay.
What could change are the recreational amenities.
Sure.
What Lambshead is doing as far as their water quality and their water storage component probably isn't going to change too much from what you see here.
Great. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank all you guys for your positive reaction to what we're doing
Great,
here.
thanks.
So you'll hear from me from time to time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks, Jesse.
You want to move that item?
Sure. It's a great item.
Motion is second on the floor. Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, any objections? Motion carries. Thank you all. Now we'll move into the administrative agenda. Mr. Gigelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number one is ask you to consider acquisition of 2 Conservation 2020 nominees. And Mr. Clemens, please present the item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Clemens, County Lands. The 2 parcels that are being presented today, both were recommended to go forward by Class Act by unanimous vote. Nomination 610 is about a quarter-acre tract. It's within the Caloosahatchee Creeks Preserve, and it does have potential for adding to tortoise habitat and some pine flatwoods. Overall, it's an infill parcel. Parcel nomination 611 is a crew parcel. That property is about 2.5 acres and again is an infill parcel. We got an email yesterday that the crew trust is going to, at closing, add $1,000 toward the purchase of that parcel.
Excuse me, is it, the total purchase is $4,000?
No, the $4,000 is for services that we will need, phase 1 audit and survey.
Okay, well, what, then the total,
This is not for the purchase price. We're looking to get authorization to proceed with acquisition activities.
okay, well, but their $1,000 will do what?
Go toward the purchase
Toward that
of
4,000?
the crew parcel.
Will it reduce the,
It'll reduce
4,000.
the overall cost, but it will go towards the purchase of the land, not the service.
purchase? Okay, when we do that step,
Yes, sir.
which is not today.
Correct.
This is step 1.
Yes, sir.
So essentially due diligence that's required to actually move forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of administrative item number 1.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, any objections? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, last week, please recall, Commissioner Ruane, on a commissioner item, asked us to bring back for your consideration the Southwest Florida Regional Resiliency Compact Memorandum of Understanding. We've had conversations about this in the past. Through the Florida Gulf Coast University, there's an attempt to have the 3-county region, Collier, Lee, and Charlotte counties and other entities join a compact for the purpose of resiliency, to mitigate, to identify sea level rise threats, and to design mitigation solutions.
So just some history on this, gentlemen. I was approached by Senator Rodriguez. He'd indicated that the Speaker of the House was very much in favor of looking to continue to look at sea level rise as well as flood mitigation. The concerns on this compact were certainly the funding and its sustainability, kind of like an RPC of those natures. I got Dr. Severese to indicate that, for the first 3 years, he has, certainly in a potential way of putting together a budget, securing the necessary funding associated with this, and would not look to any municipalities, including the county, for any type of dollars and cents. And with that, after 3 years, if there was a need to, we had the ability to opt out. I think it's really important to continue to allow us a compact, both Cape Coral, Estero, Sanibel, and it's on Fort Myers' agenda, and I've had some conversations with the people down at Bonita. I think there was a lot of initial skepticism relative to this and cost and what it might do. I think the regional compact together allows this compact the opportunity to continue to explore the various grants that are out there. Sea level rise, having come from an island, certainly understood the ramifications and flood mitigation of what Irma was going to potentially do to Sanibel, and more importantly, the impacts it had to Bonita. So I just think it's important if we can put our efforts together, allow this opportunity. This is just support. I did spend some time, about 2 hours, with Collier, and certainly they're leaning towards that direction. Now that the momentum has continued to do that, I brought it up in a conversation with not only Senator Rodriguez, but Senator Pasadoma. So there seems to be more regional support behind this, and that's why I brought it as an item for discussion and or consideration. But there's no cost to us. It really is showing the unity inside this area to allow the potential funding and grant funding that's necessary to continue to get data relative to sea level rise and flood mitigation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I'm not certain what this is creating other than several government agencies that are going to work together. In what way we're going to have?
FGCU, Water School, Dr. Severese are trying to find and go into data collection and or information that's going to help us deal with sea level rise as well as
is the university going to be the spirit here?
Dr. Severese is leading it. There's several players in it. There's an item and attachments that we all forwarded to you. I certainly can get you more, but there's, hang on one second.
And we, Lee County government, are saying herewith that we are going to work with them. We'll listen in and participate in these meetings. And
first and foremost, obviously, we think the region needs to continue to explore, and we need to continue to find scientific information to look at sea level rise and look at flooding. We as government will, obviously be participants, as we obviously have issues that we dealt with relative to Irma. We had to deal with down in Bonita. So any participation we can take from a scientific point of view, we'd like to do that. It seems to be a unity in 3 counties, Charlotte, Lee, and Collier.
sounds fine to me. Thank you.
Again, there's no specific cost to the county. Have that in black and white.
At this point, but we'll have...
Well, in 3 years, we can certainly look at that situation. The thought certainly is having more uniformity and unity in this regard. there'd be more opportunities to see that we're more compact. It's an issue that's before us. It's an issue we've dealt with. Irma certainly was a touchy situation as the mayor of Sanibel, thinking it was going to be underwater. I think whatever scientific information we can gather is always helpful when groups reach out, and certainly looking for our support without our checkbook. It benefits our area, Lee County, so I didn't see a downside.
And anything that makes us smarter with regard to flood insurance and being prepared, flood insurance,
Mitigation of any sort.
absent flood insurance in Lee County, we'd be in a fix.
We all remember many years ago, both God rest his soul, Commissioner Kike and I went to Washington to talk about the national flood issues that we had, the potential impacts it had. So anything we continue to do, we should look at this.
Well, thank you for your pushing this.
Thank you. A couple things. One is I sat through Dr. Severice's presentation. Initially, had some questions, but I think some of the follow-up that we've done added some clarity to that. Had a conversation with the Audubon Society yesterday, and it was a very constructive piece of that. I think the other thing is that as we look at Southwest Florida, the more that we can do in a cooperative manner, I think the best for us. And I think there's certainly an adequate amount of flexibility in this for us to adjust as we go along. So I think it's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I thank you. I'm just going to say how I feel about this one. I actually am not a fan of the way this is structured and put together. I have major concerns with the governance that was outlined in the memorandum of understanding. So it appears that each member will get one vote each. Well, I don't see how that proportionately recognizes or represents Lee County. Obviously, being most likely the largest member, we would have the same amount of votes as the Captiva Erosion Prevention District, which would be the smallest district that would be in there right now. And so I'm nervous because I feel like the burden is going to fall probably to the bigger counties to do a lot of the staff work and do a lot of the future work related to this, but yet the representation is going to be spread evenly. Then when I think of that one vote and per member, I get even more concerned when I read in the Memorandum of Understanding that membership can be expanded over time to include non-governmental organizations. So, different environmental foundations or whoever, non-governmental organizations could be expanded, and then would they have the same level of voting as elected officials, or would they, I have a lot of concerns. I believe it could probably be rewritten in a way that would give me comfort, but right now it's very broad, and I think it could be narrowly tailored. If I understand the vision of the legislature, it is that this would be a group of municipalities that would get together and basically rank projects for future state funding that would go towards building more resiliency into our coastline. I don't have a problem with that. I just wish that that's actually how this was written. This doesn't seem to be written that way. It seems to leave far too much open to the imagination. And, the potential is, yes, we could pull out if we disagreed with it, but what would really happen in that case if we did pull out, if we disagreed with it, would be this would be used as a tool to publicly beat us into submission to go with what the group wants, even if we as a board disagreed with it. So that's my thought on this.
As I said, I think there's enough flexibility built into this. My preference is to be in at the start, contribute, see if it goes the right way. We can adjust later. But I think if we look at it cooperatively, it seems to make sense for me.
I understand what you're saying, Commissioner, but I don't see anything that is chiseled in stone to the extent of which in this agreement that's going to commit us to anything, especially in terms of dollars in the future. But I think the information exchange is critically important at this time. And I'm okay taking this first step and see where we go. We're always in control of our money in the final analysis.
Well, I guess, and I respect Commissioner Hammond's point of view and some thoughts, and so it continues down the path. Lee County doesn't support this initiative. It goes and passes in Fort Myers. It goes and passes in the beach. It goes down to Kyer. They're there. So we ultimately have all our sister cities within our county participate in this. We opted not to. We don't get to have a voice. We don't get to sit at the table. We don't get to get into the debate. As someone that's been on the MPO, and I respect her situation, that came from a small city, I can recall many discussions that might have impacted Sanibel, and realizing I only had one vote. The advocacy and the consent building you need to do is to make sure you have the necessary votes. So there were some challenges. There was talks at one point in time to have a circulating bus through Sanibel. Commissioner Juder thought that was essential. He told me I'd never get the votes. So, again, I understand, but I don't know that I'd like sitting on the sidelines, especially when all the other cities are going to be involved in this. And it's on that path with Cape Coral being the largest city, Estero certainly being on board, Sanibel being on board, and having talked with Benita and their situation, the biggest consternation was, as Ray had indicated, the ability to adjust and the cost. They're moving forward with it. It's going to be on next week's agenda and the beach. So I respect your comments, Brian. I really do, more than you know. But if there's a desire.
Does this require a motion?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll make it.
And I'll second it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Commissioners, the requested motion, there's an A and a B. A is to approve membership. B is to designate a county representative for the leadership team responsible for compact governance. And it can be either elected or appointed.
My motion included the chairman being our designated hitter.
I will second that.
Now, does that mean
A and B?
whoever the chairman is at the time?
I'm
'Cause this'll
referring
live on-
specifically to this, I'll put a name with it, Kevin,
But
because he's an island man, and that's why I like him.
so that would be a permanent appointment of Chair Ruane to be the liaison into the future, or do you want it to rotate with the chairmanship each year?
No, I wanted him because he's from Sanibel, and he knows what the tide when it comes up and goes back.
I'll second that motion. Any other discussion?
If he abuses the office, we'll remove him. Yeah.
Any public comment? Come on.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to take my mask off. My name is Hallie. I live at 14300 Riva del Lago Drive, and I'm with Audubon, Florida. So I was born and raised in Fort Myers, and after leaving to attend college, returned to make my home and my future in Lee County. As an organizer with Audubon, Florida, and a lifelong resident of Southwest Florida, I recognize the significant benefits of the Southwest Florida Regional Resiliency Compact. I've chosen to make this my home in part because of our beautiful natural spaces. I have a deep passion for protecting Southwest Florida's iconic natural resources for our economy, tourism, and residents like me. The compact will help strengthen the county's ability to leverage those natural resources for flood risk reduction, water quality benefits, as well as protecting them for future generations to enjoy, like myself. Since Charlotte County first voted to approve the MOU for the compact in July 2020, Southwest Florida governments and residents have expressed enthusiasm for the compact. 10 jurisdictions have already approved the MOU, including Fort Myers Beach, Cape Coral, and Sanibel, as Commissioner Ruane mentioned. My conversations with council members and staff from other jurisdictions underscored the compact's ability to address the regional concerns Southwest Florida faces that is responsive to the region's character, support and add capacity to current local resilience efforts through technical assistance and collective resources, and simultaneously creating opportunities to bolster local economies and communities. When it comes to resilience, we know we're stronger when we work together. I urge you to support the formation of the compact by voting to approve the MOU and committing to a future in which Lee County's resilience is strengthened by shared science and shared solutions. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Chair, I'm Brad Cornell. I'm here on behalf of Audubon, Florida's Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and also
Do the timer real quick. Thanks.
Sure.
also the Lee County chapter, Audubon of Southwest Florida. So I appreciate the opportunity to address you. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for bringing this forward as an item for discussion and action today. I just want to reinforce some of the themes that you were just discussing. One of them is that the governor has proposed in his budget that there be $1 billion for resiliency projects over the next 4 years. The legislature is looking at $100 million a year, so they're kind of far apart on that. Obviously, the legislature has the power of the purse, but I think the point is that it's clear Florida and its leadership is looking for solutions, looking to fund those solutions, and collaboration is one of the primary ways to get these projects planned and implemented. And which is my second point, which is that this is an opportunity to share resources, share staff, share ideas and smarts. None of us can do this alone. You look to the town of Fort Myers Beach, they're an island as well, and I think that, they have voted to join. I think, like Sanibel, this is something that they see as, please help us. Let's work together. Let's sit around the table and figure out what these projects are, what creates resiliency in Southwest Florida. So thank you very much for your support for this.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. I have a motion, a second on the floor. Any objections?
On.
Motion carries 3-1. Vote for the record.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to last comment. I want to, every time I see our young people involved, whether it's the water school, Haley was on a call yesterday. I'm excited about that because this stuff is generational and gives me great hope in the future going forward. So.
Item number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3, asking you to approve resolution supporting innovative water quality technologies for Lake Okeechobee. Mr. Artolini, will you please present the item?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is approve a resolution in support of innovative technology for nutrient removal in and around Lake Okeechobee. This resolution is similar to many others being approved by counties and cities in South Florida. It basically supports removing nutrients from the lake prior to that being discharged to Caloosahatchee and then providing nutrient loading to our estuary. Specifically, one of the innovative technologies they want to pursue is mechanical harvesting of algae, as well as the bottom sediment of Lake Okeechobee, mechanically harvesting it and processing it where it could be used as land application for agriculture in that area. So there's a lot of funds available now available by the State for Innovative Technology, and so we support at least a pilot project to see the cost effectiveness and also the scalability of this technology.
Ron, it's great that you bring this forward. I've been talking about this for quite some time. It's good to see that it's moving forward. I think it's certainly really helpful.
I need a little clarification. I'm familiar with mechanical harvesting of grasses, and historically there's been a lot of that done, but it's time-consuming. It's slow. Finding a place to put what you're harvesting is always difficult, and that's with grasses and seaweeds and that sort of thing. You're referring to algae. Is this an altogether different process? How do you harvest something as small as algae?
Well, I mean, we had our own personal experience with harvesting algae, as you recall, back in 2018. So it's cumbersome. It's, you're actually collecting it from the surface and processing that. In our case, we hauled away in tankers. This case, they're trying to use some sort of like a macerator or some sort of almost like a large juicer to put it down to liquid form, and that would be pumped and piped to some land application in and around the Lake Okeechobee area. Again, it's a pilot process. Obviously we'd have to see how effective that is in terms of different between grasses or different types of algae, or they're even talking about possibly removing some of the muck bottom and processing that. So.
Okay, now I'm just trying to understand the whole concept. You're talking about pipes. We're going to have like a barge out there that
Yes.
moves around, and it's got a huge pump on it. And it's sucking up the algae and sending it perhaps through a couple of miles of pipe, or 5, to some place that we've got permission to This is largely experimental, or can we point to its success in some other lake?
I believe they've used this technology in certain central part of the state, harvesting algae and processing it. I don't know to what scale.
But there's obviously contractors out there with the equipment prepared to, once we say yes,
Yes, there is.
to step in and give it a try. I don't see what we got to lose by experimenting here.
It's actually been done in Michigan, so I'm familiar with the process to some degree.
They got blue-green algae in Michigan too, don't they?
We over pesticide everything here in the United States, what you do. So any plant that you obviously spray going to be nutrient loaded. Obviously, it can accumulate, and obviously, removal of that and or algae that's created is really the thought of it. So I think we have a tendency. I know there's a lot of studies with Roundup and different things that are out there that obviously are adding to high nutrient, high phosphate levels. So that was really the concept. So it's more common than you think. It's even in basic lakes. When I lived in Sanibel, not only was it in the bay or the Gulf, around lakes, you'd have issues with high nutrient contact because you had various plants and whatever that were growing. Many times you try to spray them. We use Roundup all over our property. It runs off, it goes in there, it has nutrients, so it attaches to the plants, removing the plants. Obviously, get rid of some of the legacy nutrients that are in there. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I will move approval of this item. I'm excited to see the future here for Lake Okeechobee. It is interesting that we're putting billions of dollars into reworking the Everglades, and I think just one more opportunity to remove nutrients out of that lake would really hopefully make that work worth all the more. So, move approval.
I'll second that. Motion second on the floor. Any public comment? Any other discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 is to award contract for Corkscrew Phase 1 construction. Mr. Searchy.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is to approve the construction contract for Phase 1 of the Corkscrew project. It's a widening from Ben Hill Griffin to Bellaterra Boulevard. Years ago, we had some excess fill on one of the Three Oaks projects, and we embanked that section, part of the section of this project, and we revised the permit, so we're actually able to 6-lane the first 4,600 feet from Ben Hill Griffin to Firehouse Lane. The last 2 miles to Bellaterra will be 4-lane. The segment 2 of Corkscrew, we're about 90% plans. We hope to have that ready to bid next summer, so move along there as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Sure.
So really excited about this project, Randy. This is something we've all been talking about for a long time, and I'm glad to see. So construction will begin in April 21. For some of the residents out there who live in the area, do you have any kind of a layman's description of what the maintenance of traffic is going to look like? I mean, what can they expect on their roads starting in April 2021? Will lanes be shut down?
We won't shut down lanes during the daytime. If we do need to shut down lanes for water installation or enforcement, that'll happen at night. That's usually what we do. We'll maintain 2 lanes of traffic during the day through the project.
What about communications? Sometimes on really big projects like this, we've hired communications teams to help us out.
We have a website in place. We'll have a PIO on the project. Betsy will be helping as well, so we'll have plenty. I'm sure we'll get plenty of calls, and we're ready to answer.
Absolutely agree. This is I'll say overdue, but looking forward to this. And as I say, usually when we talk about roads, it takes time, patience, and money. And so there's a big commitment for us here. And if there's any way to continue to move this up as we talk about timelines, I would certainly encourage that as well. So this is critical.
Like I say, segment 2, we're reviewing the 90% plans. We're not going to wait till segment one's over. Once we're ready, once we get that thing, we're just going to bid it. We'll have the whole stretch wide open at one point in time. I imagine about a year.
I'd like to thank our folks down there for their patience to date and going forward.
Any motion?
I'll defer to the district commissioner to make the motion.
I'll make a motion to move this forward.
All right, I'll second that.
Motion second on the floor. Great project. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any other discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into public hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is David Halverson. I'm with the County Attorney's Office at your first public hearing this morning. I'm providing the affidavit of publication to the clerk. This is a petition to vacate the public's interest in a public utility easement located at 911 Columbus Avenue in Lehigh Acres. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
If there's no public comment, I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Motion is second on the floor. Any other discussion? Any public comment wish to say anything? Seeing none, bring it back up. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is your second public hearing. This is a hearing to adopt an amendment to the Conservation 2020 ordinance. I have reviewed your affidavit of publication. We'll enter that into the record now. The proposed ordinance amendment will remove the requirement for biannual selection of appraisers, and it will also make one other adjustment to a requirement to report the asking price of projects on an annual report. With that, staff is here to answer any additional questions you have. This requires a supermajority of the board in order to approve the amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what's the nature of the biannual procurement? Why are we changing that? Why is that no longer necessary, or why is it cumbersome? Why are we doing this?
The simple answer I can give you as Robert comes up to providing additional detail is the amount of appraisers that are actually submitting for county work are so little that it's becoming harder to find the appraisers we need to do the work we need.
Okay.
We will still require state certified appraisers to do the work. It just requires us right now to do it every or twice a year for actual bidding out the services.
Thank you.
So that, sorry. So really, in effect, we're removing the biannual procurement process.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just wanted clarity. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll move it.
Second.
A motion is second on the floor. Any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, any opposition? Motion carries unanimous. That'll conclude the public hearing items. We'll move on to the walk-on agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please recall, at your last regular board meeting 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Hammond raised the issue with you all of the non-congregate sheltering for homeless, and you asked us to come back with potential solutions today, and we're prepared to do that. So I'd like for Mr. Mark Mora to present the item today.
Thank you, Mr. DeJarlais. Good morning, Commissioners. It's with great excitement I share this presentation with you this morning on behalf of the Human Services and Veteran Services Department. As the county manager mentioned, during the last board meeting, staff were directed to develop and present options for temporarily sheltering individuals experiencing homelessness and awaiting placement in permanent housing through the Rapid Rehousing Program. This morning's walk-on agenda is a response to that direction and includes a presentation outlining a potential short-term plan for your consideration. Next slide, please. So the direction that at the conclusion of this presentation we're kindly seeking from the board is the direction on beginning a non-congregate temporary sheltering operation, which could be administered either by a nonprofit partner or the Human and Veteran Services Department. Next slide, please. Just a quick review of this presentation and the discussion items. While that's moving along, I did want to make sure we're all familiar with the language that's used in the presentation. Connect list. You might have a question, what does that mean? The Connect list is comprised of homeless individuals and families that have completed the continuum of care's coordinated entry process. And these are folks that have sought out assistance with permanent housing. And I think we had a conversation during the strategic planning session that list is fluid. It grows, it shrinks. Right now it's hovering a little bit above 300 individuals or households, if you will. So I want to make sure that we understand the terminology we're using, and this proposal is looking or focusing on those folks that are currently on that list. Next slide, please. I do want to put out the caveat that anybody that goes through the coordinated entry process is offered sheltering, an emergency sheltering, a transitional shelter. However, there is a lack of family sheltering here locally in the county. So one of the challenges is when families come forward and want assistance, we are limited on the space that we have to shelter them on a temporary basis. So this whole proposal is focusing primarily on those families because they are a challenge in finding temporary housing. The prioritization factors that you see there on the screen now assist our team as well as the continuum of care in the placement of individuals. It prioritizes them based upon their vulnerability factors, and you can see them there. I won't read them all. Trimorbidity, physical and behavioral health. These are all things that are assessed when people go through that process and are asking for housing. So we determine the placement based upon these factors. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the Connect list right now as it stands. And again, this data is from March 5th. There are 339 households, and obviously that number's grown since we had a strategic plan in session, and it probably will continue to grow as we do a little bit more intensive outreach to communities of homeless individuals. Of those 339 households, we are prioritizing 123 of them for permanent supportive housing. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, if you're familiar with Castle and Castle's projects, they are putting the wraparound services right there where individuals will be housed. So behavioral and health specialists, any other wraparound service that an individual uniquely needs because of their circumstances are provided right there on site. We also have 216 households that have been prioritized for rapid rehousing. And I think we've talked about rapid rehousing in the past. It does provide families and individuals rent and utility assistance for up to 1 year. You break those two groups down further, of the 123 that we've prioritized for permanent supportive housing, 96 of those are adult-only households. And 27 of those households are families with children under 18. Adult-only means it could be a couple. It could be a couple with adult children. The families with children could be a single parent with children. It could be two parents with children. There's many different scenarios in which people are categorized as a family. And moving on to the rapid rehousing prioritization, of the 216, 174 are adult only, and 42 are families with children under 18. Next slide, please. So again, I'd like to reemphasize the fact that in this particular plan and program, we are emphasizing or focusing on the 69 households that have children under 18, as well as 27 adult-only family households. So those are the target populations. We also wanted to give you a feeling for this particular group. So the characteristics are there as well in the presentation. I just want to point out a few pieces of key data. Of the 69 households, we have location data for 50 of them. As they went through the coordinated entry process, they shared information with us that we collected and store in an HMIS system. And you can see where those 50 households are currently, or at the time that we intake them, where they're residing. So we've got 12 families in vehicles, 7 are outside. And I think there was a big concern about families living unsheltered on the streets. There are 6 that are couch surfing, 5 currently living in hotels, and there are 20 in shelters. So that kind of gives you an idea of where these families are currently residing. And then the factors that we use to prioritize them are there as well. Another piece of real key data here is that of the 50 that we have information on, there's an average monthly income of $1,420. Obviously, not enough income to qualify them for rent in Fort Myers at this point. That's the essence of the rapid rehousing program. It allows them to live rent-free and utility-free, but with a plan in place for them to seek the services they may need, as well as work on job skills and hopefully gain employment where they can get some self-sufficiency. And I'd like to really touch on self-sufficiency as we started to look at the individuals that went into the rapid rehousing program over the last 3 years. And I'm really happy to share with you that we have seen great improvement on the number of people not returning to homelessness. Back in 2017, about 15% of the individuals or families that went into rapid rehousing returned to the streets as homeless. This past year, only 5% of those families have returned, or individuals have returned to homelessness. So there's been some vast improvements in the program. You know, again, we'd like for all of them to stay in sustainable housing, and that is the goal, but we are seeing our numbers improve. Next slide, please. So, you know, currently the path is, and here's where the concern lies, is for these families that we're targeting. Right now, the pathway is basically you're living where you are right now, you're waiting for a unit to become available, a case manager contacts you, and then you're placed into permanent housing. That timeline, or that duration that they waited for housing prior to December 1 was up to 50 days. Of course, we put some intensive approaches in place beginning December 1 as part of our 100 in 100 goal, and we're happy to report that we've dropped that number down to about 30 days. Still not good enough. One of the things, and we'll talk about later on some considerations that we got to make sure that we understand, is the housing inventory really limits how fast we can move people into permanent housing. And again, some positive news on that side. As of yesterday, we have 80 units identified and ready for the rapid rehousing program. So there's efforts being made, and I will credit also the City of Fort Myers for helping us with that effort in identifying landlords, property managers that are willing to be part of the program. We've engaged our communications department to help us with a campaign to advertise the fact that we're looking for housing for this program and how advantageous it is for them to be part of this program. So that's the current path. So the aim in this proposal, next slide please, would be to add an intermediary step here. So people go from street, vehicle, wherever they may be right now, when we're talking about families and individuals who test positive or are ordered to quarantine by the Department of Health. We have engaged with a local hotel. They're provided a room and provided wraparound services. So that model will be in play here as well. So we would engage with hotels and motels locally. We would put them up for however long it would take to find them a permanent unit. We're hoping that we can shrink that 30 days down to a maximum of 2 weeks. The great thing here is you keep families together. I'll go back to my original statement that we have a challenge with housing families. There's just not enough capacity to keep them together. And keeping families together is important. So this non-congregate sheltering plan keeps them in a hotel room or motel room together until we can find that permanent housing. I also want to mention that they're just not put in a hotel room. Case managers are provided, wraparound services, basic needs, clothing, food. Those are all things that are included in this approach that we're taking or proposing to take. Next slide, please. So just in a little bit greater detail, this short-term solution. Again, it can be administered by the Human and Veteran Services team or a nonprofit partner. We have engaged with 5 providers right now in the rapid rehousing program. So either our department internally or one of the nonprofit partners can scale up and provide these services. Staffing, what would that take, particularly with that target population that we're talking about? Outreach staff, at least 1 FTE. Case management, at least 3, with the numbers that we're looking at or estimating. Operational needs, obviously contracting with the hotel and motel. We do have a contract in place with at least 1 in Fort Myers. Certainly would look at engaging more. Security is also important. In discussions with the current hotel that we have under contract, that's something that they suggested would be helpful. And again, we talked about basic needs, food, hygiene products, clothing, laundry services, all those essential things that families need while they're in sheltering. And I think the biggest thing is the rapid rehousing program. Again, this intermediary step hopefully is 2 weeks, 3 weeks at the most. Most importantly, it's the rapid rehousing program, providing those families an opportunity to get off the street, get their lives back together, avail themselves of all the services that we have in place, and eventually self-sustainability. So again, up to 12 months of rent and utilities are provided in this program. Next slide, please. So just a breakdown on the cost, and these are all based upon staffing either at the department level or with a nonprofit. The operational cost obviously includes the hotel stays as well as other ancillary things that might be needed. We mentioned security, the basic needs, that's the food, clothing, and obviously the largest piece of this whole budget that we're proposing is the rapid rehousing program, and 70 units for up to 12 months. The estimated project total is not to exceed $1.9 million. Obviously, the program's fluid. The list will grow, the list will shrink, families will become self-sustaining before the 12 months. Some might require some additional time. So this is all estimated based upon our experiences and also what our partners have experienced as well. Next slide, please. So a timeline. If this proposal gains approval this morning and funds can be allocated towards the program by April 1, we believe that by May 1st, we will have executed contracts with non-profit providers, or the staff have been onboarded at Human and Veteran Services to administer the program. We'd look at probably temporary employees in Human and Veteran Services for this purpose and begin the project on that date. May 15th, we anticipate families will begin moving into those non-congregate sheltering settings, and by May 30th, begin the placement in permanent housing. Again, there's a lot of variables at play here. If we have the available housing stock, we certainly can move up that May 30th day. Next slide, please. You know, while we're talking about a short-term solution, one of the things that we heard from the strategic planning session is we also have to look at long-term solutions as well. So the proposal this morning is basically addressing those families that are awaiting housing. But more long-term, we wanted to bring to your attention to some of the things and direction that this board has provided in the past that's really resulted in some great things. What you're looking at here is a project that's ongoing by the Affordable Home Ownership Organization. Lois Healy heads that up. And I wanted to point it out to you because we get a lot of people coming to us, particularly commissioners, talking about tiny homes. And this is much like that concept. However, this is a proof-in concept, if you will, because it's been successful. These things are referred to as single-room occupancy housing. They're all under one roof, but they have individual housing for up to 4 individuals. The great thing about this program is we've funded it in the past, and we've also provided sheeted lots for these projects to be built upon. So I wanted to share that with you as a model of something that we can consider moving forward. They are provided funding from both DCD and Human Veteran Services, so we have had some success in the past funding these types of projects and moving people from the Connect list into some of these individual units. The next slide, please. And this just gives you an idea of this concept. There's a central lounge area or living quarters, if you will. Each of the units have their own restroom as well as kitchen efficiency, and then there's a larger kitchen in the lounge area. So it allows for some independent living within those individual units, but also it has some shared space as well. The challenges we've had with tiny homes obviously is permitting, zoning, really making them work in a neighborhood where the community would accept them. These have been very successful. I believe 17 have been built to date, and the process has gone quite smoothly. Next slide, please. So we touched upon some things that we've got to keep in mind as we implement any project or any plan to address homelessness. Particularly with rapid rehousing is the affordable housing stock. We've got to continually look for available units to be part of the program. That's a large variable. Client choice. We do know that when we do outreach, there are some folks that just don't want to be on the pathway to rapid rehousing. It's just not their choice at this time. We don't give up on those folks. That's why we do intensive outreach. It might take 3, 4, 5 times that we make encounters with them, but we don't give up. But we do know that there'll be some clients that we work with that just are not interested in this type of housing. Nonprofit capacity, we've talked about that as well. The ability for our nonprofits to scale up and deliver projects or plans like this is a concern to us. But we do have confidence that given the right resources, they'll be able to do that. Case management also is an ongoing challenge for us. Again, we don't place people into housing and just leave them there. The idea is they have a case manager aside. This case manager makes constant contact with them. They do have a plan in place. Accountability is in place as well for those individuals that we place, because ultimately the goal is self-sufficiency. And lastly is funding sources and availability. You know, we do get some funding, and we were fortunate to receive some CARES Act money from HUD that's helped push these programs forward. But again, always funding is a concern. Next slide, please. So again, just to circle back, looking for board direction today, and to focus on those families that are on that connect list looking for permanent housing. We're looking for some direction on beginning the non-congregate temporary sheltering operation, and the flexibility of either doing that via contract with a nonprofit provider or through our human services team. So with that, I wrap up the presentation and welcome any questions. We do have staff available here if there's any details that need to be explained. And I appreciate your time and consideration this morning.
Mr. Chair, we have placed these two options on the table for you to consider. Mark, will you please explain the difference between the two and the timing issue?
Sure, yeah. Human and Veteran Services obviously would have to bring on additional staff. They are at capacity now with the other programs that they're administering. This would require for us to advertise, obviously, and find qualified people to do this work. Case management's a very unique skill. And, you know, we've had challenges just hiring people in human services with those skill sets. So there will be a challenge for us to scale up and find those people and onboard them. Up to a month it would take for us to build that capacity. With the nonprofits, obviously they work with this type of stuff. This is their bailiwick, if you will. It's their profession. We suspect that they would probably have similar challenges, but at the same time probably scale up a lot quicker than us. We've been pushing them. As we shared during the strategic plan in session, we've engaged with 5. We saw some successes with a few of them, and we've been pushing them using information and data and incentivizing them to hire more people and to move the program forward. So I think with both approaches, there's at least a month's time to scale up and to be able to administer this program successfully.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely.
So by doing a contract with the nonprofit provider, you think we could get people placed in these hotels faster than if we were to have to staff up and create the extra positions within Human and Veteran Services?
Yeah, I would say that in discussions with our team in Human Services, we believe that the nonprofits could scale up. They do this type of work and probably would be a little bit more agile with it than we are. But again, Human and Veteran Services has the ability as well. So I think it's either or. Nonprofits obviously have a little bit more bandwidth. There's more of them that we can contract with. So we can spread out that work a little bit more evenly if we had contracted with a nonprofit provider.
Obviously, you laid out who's on the waiting list and what the goal is and who to get housed and everything like that. How would you manage it with a nonprofit contract?
I think the same way. You know, the coordinated entry process includes those nonprofit providers. They have access to the HMIS system. They use the same prioritization factors that we do. So the expectation would be that they would follow this program as it was presented to the board and prioritize those families with these dollars that we're asking to contribute towards.
Mark, you said there were 5 nonprofit that you were talking to?
Yes, sir.
And you could envision more than one, maybe as many as 2 or 3 working in conjunction with us to obviously deal with the expertise, capitalize on their bandwidth, and expedite moving this along.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there has been, well, the Salvation Army and as one has shown a lot of success with this. However, we wouldn't want to put all our eggs in one basket, but we'd like to leverage the collective resources of all of those partners. So, you know, obviously those have been successful thus far. We would ask them to pick up a yeoman's effort here, but obviously would definitely look at the other partners to do some of this work as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
A couple things. First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Hammond for sending
a lot of success with this. However, we wouldn't want to put all our eggs in one basket, but we'd like to leverage the collective resources of all of those partners. So, you know, obviously those have been successful thus far. we would ask them to pick up a yeoman's effort here, but obviously would definitely look at the other partners to do some of this work as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
A couple things. First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Hammond for sending a new sense of urgency into this, so thank you for that, and to the team that's worked diligently over this past few weeks to put this together. You know, this is a national issue, and it's a big step for us, depending on the direction we go in, but I like when we can lead the way and have people look at our community as an example, and I think the more successful we are in addressing this, I think the more partners will join and want to be part of that success. I am concerned about the sustainability of the responsibility here, but I'd rather try to move it along and see if we can make this thing work on behalf of our community as a whole, and certainly for the individuals affected.
A couple other things. Mark, could you go back a couple slides? I mean, there was a slide you had where average income was around $1,400 and the price of rent was around $1,300, and then you brought reference to that, the screen that was just up there. I want to go between that one and that chart you did. So obviously this is a short-term solution, and obviously we're identifying that. One of the longer-term, there it is, one of the longer-term issues you brought up, which obviously was there, is they do have monthly income. It's just obviously not at a level. Certainly believe it is imperative that we do hand up and give people an opportunity. As someone that's been in that role, I sit here as a county commissioner running 6 companies, and I did have a handout and hand up when I was certainly in my worst times. So I understand what it is. I think it's an opportunity, but it seems like there's a short-term solution, and I'm for nonprofits. I'm all for utilizing those. They have the bandwidth. I think they have the capacity. But the second issue, if you can go to the other screen of the long-term solution you had with the housing, it's kind of a model of a place, and it had the interior of, there it is, great. So obviously, you know, potential long-term solutions are there. You know, when we were in Sanibel, we not only had below-market housing, but then we had limited equity housing, or what we call is affordable housing. You hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of money and funds available to that, and what you're trying to do is find a ladder for people, and they're willing to contribute. The below-market housing was 30% of their income. They paid for rent, so they're contributing. The long-term solution, as you've identified here, we worked with SHIP and many other agencies to have what we call limited equity housing, a little bit different, but same solution, trying to address a long-term need, trying to do that. It's the only city that I'm aware of that's done that. Certainly looked to other cities to do that, but you know, I certainly love your presentation, would love a copy of the slides. Unfortunately, it wasn't in our package, so if we can get that, County Manager, that would be great. I'd love to follow up with you, just brainstorm a little bit long-term wise, but you did a great job, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the support.
But the last screen is really the direction. I think that's what Roger was looking for from us. It had chart up top and then 2 on the bottom, 1 correct. So from my point of view, I think we need to really consider the nonprofits as the provider, and that's really what I'd like to do, but obviously I don't have the ability to make said motion, but I think that makes more sense for us to do. It addresses a need, it expedites the need, and more importantly, they probably have a little bit more bandwidth and can work cooperatively with other nonprofits to address this issue.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just chime in briefly here and echo what Commissioner Sandelli said about our colleague here.
Yep.
Thank you very much for having the courage to bite off this morsel. This is not a small step. It's a scary step in a way, in the sense of an obligation that the County Commission is accepting here, where the end is not clear at all as to how far we're going to have to go, how long we're going to have to stay the course. So this is a bold yet necessary step, because those little tents aren't going away. They're only expanding. And I thank the people that have provided the tents for caring. But that's not a permanent solution. It's a scary solution for families. The alternative to the tent has been sleeping in cars. And what kind of life is that? And how can we continue to look the other way? Out of sight is out of mind. Thank you for your willingness, Commissioner, to look at what is obvious before us. And let's experiment. We're going to be making changes in this and additions and subtractions and as we find our way along, because some of this is going to be on-the-job training. But one last time, I commend you for your leadership on this, and I appreciate the willingness I see on the part of my colleagues here, all of you, to jump into this and see what we can do to make our community better. I think this is a bold and important first step.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you very much for your compliments, but the real compliment should go to our county manager and his team, Mr. Moore. This is a fantastic piece of work by them. We put the idea forward at the last county commission meeting, and they delivered, and I'm just very grateful. This to me has been about, I've reached out to several of the nonprofit agencies who work with the homeless every day, and they recognized that lack of housing, or maybe not lack, but shortfall of housing for families. And to me, this is about the 69 households with the 147 children who are waiting to get some sort of permanent housing, who are probably facing just a tremendous amount of uncertainty in their lives right now. And so I think you all have put forward a plan that, as Commissioner Mann said, is a bold plan and a new plan, but a plan that I think we have no other choice right now but to try and help these folks out. And so I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, for us to move forward with the plan as outlined by our staff under the contracting with the nonprofit provider scenario they outlined.
And I'll second that.
Mr. Chair? Commissioner, may I ask to include in the motion the appropriation of not to exceed $1.9 million from general fund reserves?
That would be my motion. Thank you, Mr. County Manager.
And I'll second that revised motion. Any other discussion? Any public comment? Come on.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow, for your presentation. I know Lois Healy. I've talked to her on the phone. It's having the places to build these places for permanent. That would be, the $1,200, the $1,400 a month rent that a lot of people have to pay. That's most people's income. Most of the people elderly are getting $800 to that amount, $1,200 or so a month. They cannot afford that. So these houses are permanent at the 400 or so, 300 some, with utilities that she does is good, and other things that tiny homes could be. You have a place on Palm Beach that was an old trailer park she was interested in. If we could somehow raise the money for that, we could start multiple. That was over 100 some units there. Okay, you could do a combination. As I told her, she said, well, if I get a place, you're old and just pull it. I said, hey, I got more smoke than whatever. I need a place too, but we need to work as adequate. No child should be, as you were saying, Commissioner Mann, on the street. Nobody should. So us working together, we can make that happen. So we'll talk after this meeting if I've not heard. So thank you. God bless.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Miller, J.D. I'd like to make a motion before you. An oral motion, that is. I am asking you for my $13,000 that you're going to rapidly house me with, because I intend to use that money to buy my piece of land. I don't want you to put me with a landlord nor put me in a hotel. I'm demanding my money, and it's my God-given right to do what I choose with my money. I no longer want the government to think for me, because I'm going to fix my homeless condition and circumstance. Thank you very much. And if you do not give me my money, I'm going to go to the judge to ask the judge to ask you to give me my money. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
I'm Drew Broderick from North Fort Myers. I'm founder and CEO of Showers for Homeless Fort Myers, and I like a lot of things he was saying. But like he said too, the real question is sustainability of it all, and the efficiency and lowering the prices and all that. What's stopping us in the private sector from being able to provide this is the zoning and the regulations and the zoning of unconstitutionally outlawed affordable housing options. And there are other cities right now where the lawsuits are going forward in that direction of on the constitutional, being constitutional about how they're outlawing the affordable housing options. But anyway, I've put together a model, and for $350,000 takes to build the model, houses over 80 people. So it's far more efficient. But the only way this can be done is through deregulation and rezoning. That's the only answer, the only way to make this sustainable. So I would love to sit down and speak more with that gentleman, and I'd really like to have personal sit-downs with all of you if you really care about sustainable, affordable housing for our community. I've got the solutions. I've got the investors with millions of dollars. We've been trying to build for over 10 years, and the county and the cities are the only people stopping us. They won't give us the rezoning and the deregulations we need to be able to build these models. So I would love the opportunity to be able to, which my personal model and interest doesn't address the mental illness or the addictions, but it does take thousands of people out of the who would need those social services and frees up more money for those programs to do what they do. And they also could use my model to bring their overhead down to be able to house and help these people at a much lower cost than, millions of dollars to house 80 people. I can do that for $350,000. I'm the construction superintendent. I've been in construction for over 20 years, and I've already got one working model up in St. Pete where the families are renting for $280 a month, including utilities, and as low as $100 a month for individuals. So that's sustainable for the incomes, because you don't measure affordability by that 30% formula that they use. That's far outdated and doesn't work for incomes under $50,000 in today's high cost of living. And so how you measure affordability is incomes compared to the cost of living. That's how you measure the affordability. And the only way we can achieve this is through the rezoning and deregulation. So if you guys really care about this, I really need to sit down personally with you guys, and I definitely want to speak with that gentleman more too, because he's got a great program together. It just needs to be more efficient and sustainable.
Time's up, sir. Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, that'll conclude the walk-on.
Take the vote, but just call for it.
Okay. I'm sorry. We have a motion and a second on the floor. I took public comment. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Commissioner items.
I've got one, Mr. Chairman. It's noted in our agenda here. If staff can help me get my little pictures. Yes. Perfect. That's just the way I need them. Most of you know that my wife and I live out in Alva, and we're on the river, and we it's a family thing we do, just late afternoons frequently. We ride up and down the river. And we've been out there 25 years, and during that time I have noticed the shoreline disappearing. especially the entire 1 mile of the Caloosahatchee Regional Park out there. And the commission 2 years ago made a commitment to put riprap up and down there so we'd quit losing that. There's no speed limit on the Caloosahatchee out there, and when those twin-engine, huge 42-foot diesel engines go up there, they throw a 6-foot wake. And let me, if you look at the top right picture, that's an example of a cabbage palm tree that sits out, in this case, 8 or 10 feet. But that's what I had noticed. Now look at the bottom left, and the right-hand corner of that, you'll see cabbage palms leaning into the river. Cabbage palms grow straight up until they're washed away at the base. And in front of that is a little teeny, what's left of a cypress tree. And you can see that's 12, 15 feet out in the river. That used to be land behind there. Now, what we did on the bottom right is the example of what we did 2 years ago with the riprap. And you can see the rock underneath and the flora and the fauna coming, filling that in, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It is secure. Those are healthy cypress trees. They just don't have their leaves right now behind them. And that's what, if you look there at the top right, that's what that shoreline will look like as we move into, and we've approved, and Roger has given them the go-ahead to do the second half. So I just wanted to thank the commission for their support for doing that. Otherwise, I've been there 25 years. We've lost 12 to 15 feet of shoreline, and that would just continue on. So we're going to protect the rest of the Caloosahatchee Regional Park by doing exactly what you've seen has been done so well there. Now, let me change gears a little bit. Look to the top left. That is a huge cypress tree on a little island that today is probably a half an acre. I'm building up to a request here. That little island, if you look to the top or the side there, you'll see water. That's the original Caloosahatchee River running around behind it and coming out on the right-hand side. There used to be like an 1.5 acre, 2 acre island there, but it has washed away the same way. That island doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the Water Management District, South Florida Water Management District, as do quite a number of islands up and down the Caloosahatchee and Lee County that were created when the Corps of Engineers straightened the river. The river used to go like this, and when they straightened it, it created islands. These little meanders are now islands, all of which are washing away. I'm willing to do this. I was going to write to Chauncey Goss, who's the chairman of the Water Management District now and from Lee County, and he's familiar with Caloosahatchee River and everything about it, and ask them to consider doing exactly what Lee County has done. On a much smaller scale, it can't cost that much, but these are fish habitats for breeding in these little islands, and they are bird sanctuaries, where rookeries, where they sleep at night. They move from island to island. Often, I don't know what motivates them to sleep in this one for several months, and then they go to a different one. But those bird life habitats and the fish habitats where they bed and breed are washing away. And it would be such an inexpensive challenge to the Water Management District to follow our really great example. And we can show them exactly what I've got here as what I'm asking them to do. Because that cypress tree, it'll last a long time, but the fish habitat around it, it'll be gone 3 or 4 years at the rate it's been going. As will the other islands up and down the portion of Most of those islands are in the Lee County portion. But anyway, what I'm asking you guys to support me on is writing the letter to the Water Management District asking them to consider doing exactly what we have done with the islands that they own and control. Sound good to you guys?
Very much in favor of it.
Well, super. Thank you, guys. I'll just take
I'd
that.
like to come visit this with you, Frank.
Well, I'd love to put you in the boat. I took Roger out there several years ago and let him see what we were doing. But this is such a success story that I just want to duplicate it every chance we get before it's gone. Thank you, guys.
We need to do anything?
No, I'll take the little bobbleheads.
You okay with that?
Mr. Chairman, let the record reflect, I did not refer to the county commission as bobbleheads or concur in that discussion.
Nodding heads off. Thank you, commissioners.
Any commission items?
None today, thank you.
I have two. One, as you all know, we talked about the Big Cypress Basin. Went down to Collier. We seem to have a Collier Commission that is 4-1, obviously in favor of Big Cypress and our ask. The chair seems to be reluctant because she doesn't feel that she has had enough public participation. She received this from the chairman at the time, which was Chairman Saunders. COVID happened, and she feels the need to do that. We talked a great deal about water quality and how this was imperative to water quality. She had some reservations, and so did Senator Pescadoma, whether Estero and Benita was in favor of this as well. I reached out to both. I was able to work with staff to put together a letter indicating both signed by the mayor of Benita as well as Estero. 4/5 of Collier would like to do this. Need to try to have some additional conversation with Senator Pescadoma. There seems to be some reluctancy, even though there's a majority of Collier and us regarding this. Concerns that Ms. Taylor brought up also was funding from the Water Management District and some of the impacts associated with that. At the last County Coalition meeting, there was a large discussion about 288 ASR wells to the tune of about $800 million that wasn't in the budget. So I just found it a little ironic that...
800 million?
Correct.
That's close to $1 billion.
Correct. That's the cost of those that we're moving forward with, was not in the budget. So I look at the cost associated with the Big Cypress Basin, which is really important to us, and relatively speaking, I've shared my concerns with Director Bartlett. He certainly understands that. But what I'm looking for is to pass along a letter to Senator Pescadoma. There was just some reluctancy because she didn't think that Benita and Estero were on it, and or Collier. But Collier at 4/5 is looking for this, both Benita and Estero. We certainly need this to move forward. We'd like to do it now and not wait a year.
Mr. Chairman, I fully support the letter you want to send. One question, just will the 4 commissioners who are not opposed to this in Collier, could they take some sort of an action, like maybe rescinding the resolution that they did pass in opposition to it?
Correct. I thought if I had the okay to do this, I would call each one individually. You started it for me. I've had some good opportunities, and see if we can do that. It certainly appears from conversations we've had with our staff and our consultant, they're primed to do that. I just need to make the ask.
Excellent.
Help me understand, it was my original understanding that the legislation proposed putting all of Lee County into that basin that is now Collier County alone. Or was there some compromise that was going to split Lee County?
There was some concerns about the tax dollars and how they're going to be allocated.
Well, that's the fundamental point of what this is all about.
And we have no interest in using tax dollars from Collier, and I want to make that clear.
Yes.
We're going to use the ones that were necessarily here. And, you know, the majority of the basin down in Collier supports this initiative. So we certainly believe in this, and so does Collier. So we want to move forward with this.
But this is the entire Lee County being part of the new basin, the old basin. No, half of it.
No.
300 square feet. What?
Not half.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Mann, this is the southern part of Lee County as delineated in the Big Cypress Basin boundary delineation study conducted by the state legislature. So think river south. That's not exactly accurate, but
river south.
Well, that's the easy way to think about it. That's a little too simplistic, but it's the southern part of Lee County that's actually within the basin.
Speaking, it makes sense. So, but it is essentially then all those lands south of the Caloosahatchee River would then become a part of the Big Cypress Basin.
Yes, sir. By and large, that's correct because they are actually within the watershed.
Okay, and that's how the original legislation was drafted?
Yes, sir.
And it hasn't been changed. I don't know where I heard that it was once. Okay, I stand corrected.
I think the nuance you might be speaking of, Commissioner, is there are some other lands currently outside the basin in other counties that scientifically do fall within the basin, but they're so small that this legislation was redrafted to exclude them because they're minimal. So this legislation was drafted just to include the Lee County portions that actually are within the watershed.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I think what's most compelling, Commissioner, is when you think of the southern portion, if there's ever an issue that's going to impact Collier's water quality, it would certainly be this. So that was really when we had an agreement, both Chairman Taylor and myself, an agreement on water quality. This couldn't have anything other than a profound impact on that. So I'm confused if we're trying to improve water quality, why she wouldn't embrace this, especially for other people. And we're going to hold public comment where we've had scientists, where we've had natural resource people, everybody weigh in on this and certainly make this the issue that it is. So there's just a little bit more pressure we're really going to do. I commend Commissioner Hammond for his idea. I'll go to all four commissioners, ask them to rescind it, and then circle back with Senator Pasadomo. One other item, if I could pass something down to y'all, it's just for a thought. And maybe just it's the bean counter in me, but we passed something today, $1.9 million in a budget adjustment in that regard, and obviously I understand the implications of it. I've certainly shared with the county manager and wanted to give an illustration to you all. When we were in Sanibel, we would make a budget adjustment and we would reflect the actual fund it was in, the actual adjustment, and then a balance. I was asking for such like things. We took $1.9 million out of general reserves today. You have a running tab of what you spent, so as you accumulate things, it's just something for consideration. I just thought it would be clearer, more transparent for the residents here, but anytime we do budget adjustments, it does have an impact on the budget and or the particular fund. It's just an example that I just think for clarity would be helpful. Again, it's just something I wanted to share with you. That was done when you come into today on the consent agenda. We spent an awful lot of money, and sometimes just keeping track of dollars and cents, going back to the budget, looking into it, making sure the funds were there. This is just a little clearer. It's just something that I came across. I wanted to share with you all. But I don't have any other items. Any items? Do you have any items? Nope. Commissioner items. Commissioner appointments.
Oh, starting here. I have one, a reappointment, Sean Hassett, to the Waterways Committee.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Any objections? Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two reappointments today. I'd like to reappoint Chester Young to the Waterways Committee and Kirk Woodbury to the Parks and Recreation Services Committee.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? Any objection? Any public comment? Seeing none, any objections? Motion carries unanimous. I have one appointment. It's a reappointment, Lisa Benton, to the Parks and Recreation Services Committee. I'll second that. Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Any objection?
Chairman, I have one reappointment, Betty Simpson to the Parks and Recreation Services.
Betty Simpson, she the lady at the beach?
Pardon me?
Betty Simpson, she live at the beach?
I believe so.
Good for her. She's been participating for years.
Motion second. Thanks. Any public comment? Any opposition? Motion carries. County manager items.
I have no items today, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
County attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I have the privilege of requesting the next extension of the state of local emergency for the county's COVID response.
Nice. Number 52.
Yes, sir.
I yield to Commissioner Hammond.
You yield to the Commissioner Hammond? I don't know if I want to go for it. No, I'll make the motion to approve the 52nd state of local emergency 1 year into the COVID pandemic. But I do wonder at some point, now that we've done this for a year, when we would want to let that expire. I understand we're still using it for certain procurement reasons, but as those reasons become fewer and far between, and this becomes, unfortunately, business as usual at some point, I think it'll be important to exit that state of local emergency and just incorporate what we need to do as far as our response into what we're doing as our normal county business.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Commissioner, I think in some respects, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Commissioner Hammond, but in some respects, the state of local emergency is tied to the governor's state of emergency.
Yeah.
And so that becomes part of the timing issue as well.
Very good.
The only other concern me, and I don't know, is that we extended CARES dollars and things of that nature. Didn't know what we may or may not need to do regarding that, but I agree with your sentiment. I'll second it. Motion is second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Any opposition? Motion carries.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll now go to public comments. I have two. Billy Joe Schottmiller.
Thank you. Dealing with the homeless issues, like I said, I've heard a lot of good things today. I hope we all move forward towards this. I just had a text from a person who was in the Peace Corps. She said, "Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to ask for money to get this going?" And I say, "Yes, I am." We need to work together to make sure all lives are safe. We have a wetland for animals. We need something for human beings. It's always going to be there. So, I mean, we're getting people in motels, temporarily, hotels or whatever. We need to invest in the long haul. It'll be there 50, 60 years from now. So we're not, the next generation isn't sitting here of commissioners and that and saying, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do it for them so our children don't go through what we're going through right now. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Gone through all the cards. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close it. County Manager, you want to go over the workshops we have this afternoon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This afternoon we have two topics for you. The first one will be an update by Mr. Drew Bartlett, Executive Director for the South Florida Water Management District, with partnership updates. And second discussion this afternoon will be the fiscal year 21-22 budget kickoff conversation. We begin the season.
Any other items? Call for an adjournment. Thank you.